Hey guys, this is Illusion Podfics, and today we're going to be reading Spider-Man Reborn by Reborn. This is Chapter 20. Hello, Peter. Yes! Peter cheered, jumping onto Tim as they celebrated the little voice. It worked! Tim laughed, lifting Peter up as they turned to the computer. It did! Wow, it really worked. They had been working on the AI more often once summer began, and today they finally had given it a voice. Peter beamed at the greeting, a slightly rumbly male voice coming clearly through the speakers. He spent hours trying to find the right voice to fit the AI, and now, Peter and Tim managed to have it work. As of now, the coding only allowed for conversation with the AI, someone to talk to, and in time will eventually connect to phones and comms to link with everyone together with the extra assistant. The AI would even help Babs to not be so overworked when she trying to assist everyone in a single night. Peter had plans for how to integrate this and help his family out with their nighttime activities. They finally finished the first hurdle. With this step accomplished, Peter knew they would have to name him. The trouble was, Mr. Stark always had brilliant ideas to name his inventions. Peter, for his part, wasn't as creative. Friday stood for, well, he remembered the Y stood for youth, but the rest had significance too. Peter remembered that he had an AI given to him by Mr. Stark as Karen. This one, hello, Stark. Peter smiled at the computer where a little bubble floated center his screen. Safe Technology Assistant, remade kindly, Stark. Tony Stark might not be here with Peter, but he had been one of his longest mentors who always tried to help him. Sometimes in his dreams, Peter could see those memories again. The lab time and the car rides. Those memories felt old and faded more often now, but Peter couldn't let himself forget it entirely. They built him to who he was, and his family now raised him to be better. He didn't have to struggle as much as he did once before. Just because he didn't have Mr. Stark here didn't mean he couldn't bring a piece of him into this world. Vague memories flitted through his mind of a purple alien, of planets and stars, a hug that soothed pricks of pain coursing through an older body, a sacrifice amidst the battlefield. Tony Stark saved one world. He sacrificed himself for so many people. He has two parents who would do anything to keep him safe, and a menagerie of siblings at his back. Peter may not have a suit, but he could still be a hero without it. He can help his family with what he learned from Mr. Stark, until he's ready to go out with them, until he can finally convince his dad, or sneak out to do it himself, and Stark can protect this world too. His world, at least. Welcome home, Peter, Stark responded. Peter could have sworn he heard a softness in the voice. Tim's arms tightened around him, his brother beaming down at him. Home. Peter smiled, twisting to hug his brother properly. Cass danced fluidly in the studio that his dad had made in one of the spare rooms within the manor. Peter tried his best to keep up as she glided around the room. He followed behind her, the releve being the hardest one at the moment. Peter groaned when he fell back to his feet while his sister took the stance easily, her arms raised above her head at the final position while staying upright on the tips of her toes. Peter tried again, wobbling backwards before his weight could even settle on his toes. You can do it, Cass signed, smiling at Peter. No, I can't, Peter groaned as they flopped to the ground. Ballerinas were scary. He couldn't imagine being on his toes for so long, and his sister made it look so easy. Even with the super strength, this felt hard. Peter eyed the door, hearing the calming heartbeat of his brother before the door opened. The music continued to play, restarting from the beginning as Cass moved back into first position after helping him. Damien, dance with us, Peter called as his brother finally entered the room. Damien eyed the video playing on Cass's phone. I will not. He's scared, Cass shared a grin with Peter. A silent agreement passed between them. Yeah, he can't dance. Peter nodded, crossing his arms. Damien scowled before stomping further into the room. Peter moved to allow more space for the three of them. Dancing is a necessary skill for the son of Bruce Wayne to attain. As you are so clearly struggling, I will show you how it is done. Peter giggled, choosing to stay silent as Cass once again started the dance. Keeping up felt a little easier this time since Peter's already gone through it. He kept an eye on Damien as they went, watching his brother attempt to keep up while hiding his mistakes. Cass swam around the room. Her pirouettes were on point and smooth as they transitioned into a chine. Peter managed to follow along on the latter part as Damien kept up a few paces behind. He stayed silent when Dick entered the room, grinning in a corner with his phone in hand. Peter moved forward as Cass lifted him to raise him higher in the sauté. I did it, Peter laughed, hopping around a little when he landed. Even with the help from the spider-bite, Peter struggled with the jump and the choreography. Cass had offered to help Peter and couldn't help but grin at what he felt like was a success. Damien huffed, turning from them.
This dance is better suited for Kane's skill set. Perhaps, Peter, you should learn the courtly dances required for the gala. I don't have to dance for that, right? Peter turned to stare at Cass, who shrugged. Peter had managed to avoid most galas thanks to his age, but unfortunately he couldn't back out of this one. Both his parents already told him that he was going. He's only ever seen his family prepare for them, and he's heard enough about rogues attacking those galas to know he would be kept within arm's length of his family the entire night. You'll be fine, Poissard, Dick assured, leaving his corner. I'll be there, and if no one catches us, we can even swing on the chandeliers. The charity gala was being held in the Arts Museum mezzanine. They opened up this space as well as a few of the side rooms for patrons with a bar set up near the back. Peter clung to his mom's hand as they entered the museum. Peter had tried to fight the tux he was forced to wear, but eventually lost in the end. The little bow tie felt weird where it tickled just under his chin. Damien followed beside their father with Tim and Cass behind him. Dick had left for the museum earlier and was already somewhere inside. He felt a few of the people inside already, his dad's business occasionally being brought into the manor where Peter eventually walked into. Most of the faces were only vaguely familiar, and he couldn't spot any other kids his age. Stay with me, kitten, his mom reminded him as she excused herself from her dad's side. Peter followed her towards a crowd of women, his free hand already holding his cheek in preparation. Selena! Oh, darling, don't you look gorgeous? One woman broke from the conversation, turning to envelop his mom in a hug. The others quickly joined in as Peter ducked behind his mom's dress. She did look great. The black laced dress had little yellow accents of floral patterns that flowed outwards, hiding her sharp pointed heels. Peter thought his mom looked better in her sweaters, but he couldn't deny she was a star tonight. Is this little Peter? He's just adorable, another woman cooed, her face peeking around his mom. Peter ducked, just barely avoiding her fingers reaching for his cheeks as the other women laughed. His mom's hand came to rest on his head, her smile soft as she met his eyes. Why don't you go to your father, Peter? Okay. Peter took the escape, slipping into the crowd towards his dad. His parents had already planned to stick close, so he could run between them when he needed a break from whoever they talked to for the night. He could already see his dad amid a crowd of older gentlemen, all of them holding flutes of champagne in hand. Peter'd seen the coverage of his dad's drunken escapades and started to reconsider this plan entirely. Peter, Damien sighed, appearing at his side from nowhere. Peter just barely kept back a yelp of surprise. His spidey senses never went off with his family, and Peter was starting to consider it a betrayal. The crowd was bigger and louder than Peter had expected, making it harder for him to track each of his siblings from inside. Maybe if he found somewhere else, he could concentrate better. I'm bored, Peter pouted. There was nothing to do other than talk at the gala, and Peter was already willing to escape. He knew there were trackers in his suit already, and Babs had warned him that she was watching the gala. Do we have to be here? Yes, we do, Damien sighed, taking his rest before leading him from the crowd. Peter stuck close as they slipped around guests. Damien led him to the side where a few couches were placed, Cass already occupying one seat. Stay here if you wish. Peter immediately climbed onto the couch, curling close to his sister. Damien only nodded once at them before melting into the crowd. Cass's silent presence helped soothe his nerves as Peter watched the people ahead of them mingle. Maybe if he threw a tantrum, his family would leave early. He sat with Cass for a while, taking in the scene as people mingled in front of them. Steph always complained about how boring these things were, and Peter was starting to see it. Heard Bruce Wayne keeps a mute? Why on earth would the man spend money on a disabled? Shut up! Peter was on his feet the moment he heard his dad's name. Cass is amazing, and my dad loves all of us. You're just sad and lonely. You can't even find a girlfriend because you're a bitch-ass. Hey now, what's with the language, Pete? Dick and Tim showed up behind the pair of men, strange smiles on their faces. Peter scowled, dropping onto the couch where Cass pulled him in for a hug. Mr. Horace, I wasn't aware you had such opinions, Tim started, leaning into the man that spoke. Those ideals do not align with Wayne Enterprises, and I had thought were far from the morals of Ace Industries. Well, Mr. Horace stuttered, eyes wide at their arrival. Peter snarled from his spot, glaring at the man. I'm afraid Bruce and I may need to rethink your proposal if that is what Ace Industries believes, Tim continued offhandedly as they hummed along. Peter eyed the man as he tried to make an excuse. Dad should buy his company. Cass quietly laughed from behind him as the man paled even more at his words. Cass wasn't mute, and the guy had no right to say any of that. Peter wished his brothers didn't have to be so mature about it. At least he didn't have to be. Wiggling out of Cass's hug, Peter came to stand by the adults. He eyed the hand in Horace's pocket consideringly, His fangs have grown a lot in, and he lost 2 baby teeth in the process. He could bite them, give them something else to talk about. An arm caught him around the waist before Peter could commit to the idea, the blood pumping through the man calling to him. He turned, catching sight of Dick lifting him away from the bastard. "Dick!" Peter whined, pushing lightly against his brother. He wasn't going to bite that hard, just enough to make his point. "You don't know where he's been, Pete," Dick chuckled, ignoring his futile attempts as Tim loudly considered buying Ace industries. He wasn't grounded at the end. Tim had to explain the situation to his dad after the gala, and Peter got ice cream as a reward. "Just remember that next time someone says something you don't like, just tell one of us, okay, Peter?" his dad tried, smiling from his seat in the kitchen as Alfred topped off the ice cream with some sprinkles. "Yep," Peter took the ice cream, thanking Alfred before digging in. "But he is a bitch." His mom laughed from the other room where Peter could hear his other siblings try and hide their own laughs. His dad sighed from beside him. "All right, chum." Damien crouched low on the rooftop. The night before he had been confined inside a charity gala, and spent the majority of it watching over Peter. His brother caused quite the drama, which had thankfully brought some entertainment. However, it did not change the fact that Damien would have preferred to be Robin instead. Now he couldn't focus on what he needed to, considering said brother had been secretly meeting the Red Hood behind their father's back. It was up to him now to intervene, or at the very least assure that the new rogue would not do anything he'd regret. Perhaps he should have told his father what Peter was up to. It may be easier in the long run. But really, nothing could stop Peter once he has his sights set on something. He would only find another way to sneak out. At least this way, Damien could keep an eye out. Father would discover Peter's secret eventually, but it hardly had to come from Damien himself. Leaping across the gap, Damien rolled before moving deeper into Crime Alley. He's failed to follow Peter into his meetings the past few times, but he could go to his own meeting instead. With his brother there to intervene, there would be no secrets to maneuver around. "Thought the old man was keeping his little bursts from me," a heavily modulated voice came from below. Damien scowled, edging backwards to allow Red Hood to swing on the rooftop. Damien took the second to study the man. He hadn't seen the costume in person, and in reality it just looked as one would expect when they lacked the money for a full suit. The jacket barely hid the guns, hooked on either hip along with the knife on display by his right thigh. Damien could spot the hidden weapons within the makeshift suit, the League's own dagger hidden within too. "You've been meeting with Peter," Damien started, crossing his arms. "Father is unaware at the moment, but he is suspicious of you. Do not involve Peter in your plans." "You haven't told him anything then," Red Hood, Todd, stated. Damien resisted the urge to roll his eyes. Of course he wouldn't share the identity of Hood to his father. What difference would that make? Would knowing what has become of his son change anything? He already knew the answer. Father hadn't been pleased to know his son was raised by the League of Assassins. He disapproved of his methods and had tried to teach Damien against it. It did not take a genius to figure out he wouldn't approve of what has become of Jason Todd. Red Hood shifted in place, hands resting on the handles of his guns. "You saying I should give up?" "Do what you want. I only care that you leave Peter out of it." Damien gave him a once-over before setting off his grapple gun, swinging back out the way he came. Before he swung too far, Damien turned for one final remark. "Tell Peter the truth." Peter always took it the hardest when someone in their family died or disappeared. Damien had seen it enough to know that Todd's death from years ago still affected him today. For his brother to be seeing the same Todd each week without knowing was entertaining at first, but it was also sad. Damien knew Peter deserved to know the truth, if only to help him stay home rather than slipping out every week. He scowled into the night. Peter clouded his judgment. He should inform Father of Red Hood's appearance, but Peter was looking forward to his next meeting. He couldn't stop Peter without involving the others. If his father knew of his own knowledge over Peter's stunt, he would surely be grounded right beside his brother. No, it was better to leave the warning there for him to make use of. If not, he had all the cards. Jason Todd would be on thin ice, cracking with every interaction with Peter he has. Damien figured he would let him stand for now, but the second Peter returns harmed, the ice will shatter. Peter flung another dead fly to the Venus flytrap as it darted forward to catch it. He grinned when the fly was caught before tossing another into the air. "You should throw a rat for him, Peter," Dr. Isley mused, bringing a small bag to him. His mom had to run an errand with his dad at work, and his siblings were all occupied. It had been decided that Dr. Isley could watch him for an hour. Peter knew his dad didn't know he spent time here, but he also wasn't going to be the one to say anything. Peter took the bag, eyeing the rat in his side. "Does Frank eat animals too?" "Don't forget people," Frank laughed at Peter's face. The plant's leaves shook as he did. Dr. Isley only hummed, smelling from beside him. Peter tossed the rat before pushing his hands far from him. Peter caught the poor thing before swallowing it. His stems expanded for the larger size. You shouldn't eat people. Peter eyed his fingers from where he touched it. He hoped the rat was the store-bought ones to feed snakes. You don't know what they have. Dr. Isley laughed, petting his hair. You might have a point. After that, Peter watched nature documentaries with Dr. Isley as they waited for his mom. They watched one about the Amazon rainforest. Peter curled up on the couch as Lou joined him, his large head resting on Peter's lap. Miss Quinn had 3 hyenas, and Peter loved all of them. She even named one Bruce. Peter grinned at Lou as Bud joined them in the room. The documentary continued to play as Peter alternated who he was petting. Hey Pam, your door was unlocked. A familiarly modulated voice came from the hallway as Dr. Isley moved to stand. Peter watched as Red Hood came into the living room, freezing at the sight. Hi, Mr. Hood. Peter grinned just as Bruce licked his hand. Sorry, Bruce. Peter returned to petting Bruce as Lou turned on his back, tail wagging behind him. Mr. Hood? Dr. Isley and Hood asked, focusing on Peter. He ignored them as all 3 hyenas tried joining him on the couch. Bud practically stood on him as Lou was forced to sit up to avoid being stepped on by Bruce. He yelped when Bud's paw pressed on his tongue before wiggling around the 3. Peter crawled onto the backrest of the couch, staring down at the 3 hyenas. You need to be patient. I only have 2 hands, he laughed when Lou licked his cheek, nearly falling off the couch before he caught onto Lou's collar. Does your dad know you're here? Hood asked, hands twitching at his side. Nope. Mom's gonna be back soon. Let's talk upstairs, Mr. Hood, Dr. Isley suggested, dragging the vigilante out. Peter laid out on the mats of the empty gym. Training with the Red Hood was fun, if not a little hard. Peter didn't want to accidentally hurt the Red Hood with his strength, and he also struggled with some of the moves. Hood continued to be patient whenever Peter struggled, encouraging him to try again or showing him alternative moves that were easier. By the end of their lesson, Peter was ready to sleep. He just wasn't ready to leave yet. How do you know Dr. Isley? Peter asked, looking up as Red Hood handed him a water bottle. I've known her for a while. Selena leave you with her often? Sometimes, but she's usually there. Do you know my mom? Used to, Hood sighed, sitting on the mat beside him. How's school? Peter groaned, rolling onto his stomach before sitting up to drink some water. It's summer. Hood hummed, his mask still in place despite hanging his jacket on the rack. What do you do with all that free time? A lot. Oh, you gotta meet Stark. Peter went for his phone before remembering that he left it at Nate's house. He and Tim have managed to add Stark onto their phones, but expanding the AI's uses was taking a longer time than he thought. Still, teaching Stark to talk was fun, and they had Babs helping them out too. I left my phone. Red Hood was silent for a moment, watching Peter. He stared back, wondering what the Red Hood looked like beneath the mask. He knew better than to ask, and he hoped that Hood would be comfortable enough to remove it soon. He couldn't drink his water in another room forever, right? Peter, why do you think Jason's alive? He has to be. Peter stared at the bottle, hating the shift in conversation. He can't be dead. Everyone has moved on, but I can't. I don't want him to be gone. Hood's gloved hand reached for him, clearing a tear from Peter's eyes. It's been a long time, Pete. I don't care. I'll find him. I will. Peter snapped harsher than he meant to. He knows everyone accepted it. They all moved on, but Peter couldn't. They all left him, and his family came back. Why couldn't Jason come back too? I know he's alive. Red Hood sighed, his hand going through his hair before he remembered the mask. Peter refocused on his water. He knew it was dumb. He knew that after so long, it makes sense. His brother should be dead. He just didn't want to believe it. He didn't want to accept it. Not if there is a chance. Peter, Hood started taking a breath. I'm sorry. Why? I'm dangerous. You shouldn't be here with me. Hood started, the modulator cracking with his voice. It isn't safe. It isn't safe? So what? Fuck that, Peter snapped, shooting to his feet. I don't care. You're my friend. I trust you. You can't decide for me. Peter, no, nothing is safe. No one is. I'm not gonna run just because it's not safe. You're my friend, Hood. I can't lose you too. Peter yelled, tears falling at his words. How dare he? Peter knows Crime Alley is dangerous. He knows wandering the city at night is dangerous. He knows, but he doesn't care. If he died. Everyone keeps dying. They keep going away, and I can't lose them again. I can't lose Jason. I can't lose you. I just... Peter sobbed, falling onto Hood as he cried. Strong arms pulling him close, murmurs of apologies reaching through the mask as Peter cried into his shoulder. He couldn't lose anyone else. Peter can't be strong forever, and he can't lose any more family. He couldn't handle it if he did. First it was his parents from before, then his uncle, Mr. Stark, his aunt, his friends, his universe. Then he woke up. 2 parents, 2 brothers, and a grandfather/butler. His brother died, the boy who read classics while Peter learned to crawl, who gave him his first set of science books on his first birthday. He gained another who disappeared for nearly a month. He didn't like Tim at first, but they both loved science. Tim taught him to hack when Peter wasn't allowed to learn to fight. He came back different, though, sad and quiet. Peter protected him the best he could until he was better. His pseudo-sister died, the loud, obnoxious sister who joined him in all the scheming and planning, who helped get his parents back together when they fought. She came back with a smile and a story. His dad died. His dad, who he loved and wanted to keep safe so much, disappeared for months. Peter couldn't hug him again, cry in his arms, or play with him. He lost his dad until Tim helped bring him home. Peter couldn't do it again. He couldn't lose them and hope they came back. He couldn't lose Hood too. He might not be family, but he was his friend. He couldn't lose another friend. Not again. And not ever. I'm sorry, Peter. I'm so sorry, Hood whispered, his fingers carding through Peter's hair. Peter clung to the vigilante, wishing that if he held on long enough that he wouldn't lose them too. The one arm around him held him tighter in response. Hood stayed on the ground with him as Peter cried, "Let him go." Alright guys, and that is the end of chapter 20 of Spider-Man Reborn by Karirin. I hope you guys like this chapter, and I'll see you in the next one.